I'm Kala. On my parents' anniversary, I brought them a gift, something real, something that had taken years of effort, sacrifice, and quiet rebuilding. They laughed when they saw it, brushed it off like it was meaningless, until they realized what it actually was, the deed to an apartment. But even that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was understanding that they had been pushing me out long before that dinner ever happened. Slowly, carefully, piece by piece, removing me from photos, taking pieces of my future, even going as far as forging documents to claim what little remained of my father's legacy. So how does something like that even happen? How does a daughter become invisible inside her own family? I'll tell you, because none of it started at that dinner. It started the day my father never came home. The invitation came as a short, cold text. No greeting, no warmth, just a line. 15th anniversary dinner, Lemire Bell, 8 p.m., be decent. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, rereading it like maybe something softer would appear underneath. Maybe a follow-up, maybe something human, a simple, hope you can make it, or even a we'd like to see you. But nothing came. That was Dolores, direct, polished on the outside, but hollow underneath. I didn't reply. I just marked the date and locked my phone. Not because I wanted to go, but because I needed to. I needed to witness it, the final act, the closing performance. Some part of me still wanted closure, even if I knew it would never be offered. Lemire Bell was the kind of place that tried too hard to look expensive. Crystal chandeliers that weren't quite real, oversized wine glasses, menus written entirely in French, more for show than substance. I walked in wearing a simple navy dress, clean, understated. I didn't need attention. I wasn't there to shine. I was there to watch. They were already seated in a private room at the back, laughter spilling out too loudly, wine flowing like it meant celebration instead of performance. Dolores sat at the head of the table, draped in silver sequins that caught every light in the room. Gideon beside her, cheeks flushed from too much wine. Lyra and Bran on either side, polished, smug, like they belonged there more than I ever did. Dolores looked up as I entered, her eyes scanning me quickly before her lips curved into something thin and sharp. "Oh, you actually showed up." She leaned toward Lyra and added just loud enough, "I thought she'd just send another one of those generic cards." I didn't react. I reached into my bag and took out the small box. Minimal wrapping, a dark velvet ribbon. Quiet, like everything I had built for myself. I held it out to her steadily. "Happy anniversary." She took it like it was something suspicious. "It's small," she muttered, already amused. "Let's see what our prodigal daughter thinks is worthy of this occasion." She tore the ribbon with unnecessary drama, lifted the lid and looked inside. There was a brief pause, then laughter. "A deed," she scoffed. "To what exactly? A storage unit?" Gideon chuckled. "Maybe a tiny apartment over a liquor store." Lyra leaned closer. "Is this supposed to be funny?" Bran didn't speak, but his expression said enough. I stayed calm. "It's a luxury apartment in Cherry Creek, paid in full. It was meant to be yours, but I've changed the name on it." Something shifted then. Not admiration, not gratitude, just discomfort. The kind that creeps in when people realize you've become something without their permission. Dolores narrowed her eyes. "Why would you even give that to me?" I met her gaze. "I thought you might value it. Then I remembered who you are." She snapped the box shut. "Don't act superior, Kala. You think money erases how you walked away?"
Gideon added, "You've got a lot to say for someone who ran when things got difficult." I didn't move. I left because you made it clear I didn't belong. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back without a sound. "Enjoy your dinner." No one stopped me. No one tried. I walked out, leaving the velvet box behind, the ribbon trailing like something unfinished, something I had no intention of fixing. That night, my phone lit up over and over, Dolores trying to soften things, Lyra suddenly interested in reconnecting, Bran talking about family like it meant something again. I blocked them all, not out of anger, but because I felt none. For the first time, I wasn't that girl sitting at the table, waiting to be seen. I was done. But this wasn't where it began. That ending had been building for years. It started the day my father never came home. I was 13, a normal Tuesday, the kind no one remembers unless something breaks. That morning, he kissed my forehead like always. The smell of his aftershave lingered as he walked toward the door. "Be good, sweetheart," he said, smiling. I nodded, spoon still in my hand. Dolores sat at the table, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up, didn't say goodbye. He paused for a second, then left anyway. By afternoon, everything had changed. They pulled me out of class. The principal looked rehearsed, like she had practiced the right expression. "Your mother is here," she said softly. Dolores sat waiting, composed, perfect. "Your father passed away at work," she said. "Heart attack." That was it. No emotion, no embrace, just words. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt different, too quiet in the wrong places, too loud in others. I sat halfway down the stairs when I heard her on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen, but I couldn't stop. "Honestly, this might work out better," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Being a widow sounds better than being divorced. No legal mess. I keep everything." Then she laughed. I froze, covering my mouth so I wouldn't make a sound. Something inside me shifted then, not loudly, just enough. The funeral was exactly how she described, perfectly staged. Dolores in a fitted black dress, composed, admired. People called her strong, practical. No one noticed she didn't cry, not once. Except Aunt Ruth. She watched everything, said nothing. 4 months later, Gideon showed up, then Lyra, then Bran. Suddenly, the house felt full again, but not for me. Dolores laughed more, cooked again. The table looked warm, inviting, but I felt like I was visiting. That night, she announced the marriage like it was something to celebrate. I smiled because I had to. Lyra called me her sister. I said nothing. After that, everything changed faster than I could process. My father's name disappeared from conversation. His photo vanished from the mantel. When I asked, she dismissed it. "We're moving forward." They didn't move forward, they replaced. Lyra took my things. Bran took spaces that used to matter. Gideon filled every corner, and I shrank. One afternoon, I came home and stopped in the hallway. The photos were gone. Every memory of me and my dad replaced with new frames, perfect ones, staged ones, a new family. I stood there waiting, like maybe if I didn't move, the old ones would come back. They didn't. That night, I asked where they were. Dolores didn't even look up. "We're updating the house. It's time to move on." Gideon agreed like it was obvious. I stopped asking after that. Weeks later, my playroom was emptied. Lyra stood inside it, planning her studio. My space, gone. Bran claimed the sunroom. Doors closed, locks added, noise replaced silence. When I tried to speak up, Dolores dismissed me. "Don't be selfish, they need to feel welcome." So I disappeared quietly instead. Then came my birthday, or what used to be mine. I saw it written on the calendar. Lyra's party, same date. I waited all day for someone to notice. When I got home, the house was decorated. Balloons, streamers, a cake on the counter. "To our shining star, Lyra." Dolores turned to me mid-toast, smiling like it was nothing. "Oh, Kayla, honey, I completely forgot. Yours is today too, right? Or is it tomorrow?" People laughed like it was harmless, like it was funny. I slipped away before betrothals were lit. That night, I found a cupcake left over from some store-bought pack. I lit a match from the junk drawer, stuck it in the frosting, and sang "Happy Birthday" under my breath. That was the night I started writing.
Under my mattress. I wrote to Dad like he could still hear me. Told him about the empty frames, the quiet dinners, the way it felt to be erased while still living under the same roof. "They took your face off the walls," I wrote, "but I still see you. I still hear your laugh in the mornings, even when the house is silent. Over time, the entries became less about them and more about me. What I felt, what I feared, what I hoped no one would ever know, I hoped. I stopped speaking unless I had to. I didn't slam doors or cry where they could hear. I just floated like a shadow in the corners of a house that used to be mine. "If they won't see me," I wrote once, "I'll make sure the world does." And from then on, I did my best to fade from their lives, while quietly building the one they never expected I could. I thought keeping quiet would keep me safe, but silence didn't shield me. It only made it easier for them to twist the story. The first time it really hit me was during Lyra's senior art fundraiser. Delora had given her an envelope with several $100s to submit for her materials and competition fees. The envelope vanished the same day. By that evening, I was standing in the kitchen, backpack still on one shoulder, when Delora stormed in like a hurricane. "Where is it?" she demanded. "Where's what?" "Don't play innocent, Calla," she snapped, pointing a finger like a prosecutor in court. "The envelope, the one with Lyra's tuition money." My heart dropped. "I didn't take anything." "Of course you didn't," Lyra said, arms folded, eyes gleaming. "Just like you didn't throw out my brushes last month." "That wasn't me." Delora crossed her arms. "Just admit it. You've always resented her. I'm not blind, Calla." I looked at Gideon, who barely glanced up from the TV. Bran stayed upstairs. No one cared. No one even asked if there was any proof. The next morning, Dolores still hadn't calmed down. "You know what hurts more than the money?" she said, stirring her coffee like it personally offended her. "Knowing I can't even trust my own daughter." The envelope turned up 3 days later in Lyra's art bin, folded under some sketches. No apology, no correction. Delora just waved a hand. "She's under a lot of pressure. You're strong, Calla. She's fragile." That sentence landed like a stone. Not because it was cruel, but because it was deliberate. They wanted me to swallow it and move on. So I did, but a piece of me lodged it somewhere deep where the things that never got resolved went to rot. At school, things didn't get better. They got darker. It started with whispers, a few snickers in the hallway. I noticed people looking at me, then looking away too quickly. Then someone in English class said, "Didn't think you were that kind of girl, Calla." I didn't know what they meant until I saw it, an Instagram profile with my full name, my face, and posts I'd never made. Bitter captions, photos that were edited to look suggestive, like I was desperate for attention. A message thread with someone I didn't even know, full of flirty replies I never sent. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I knew who it was before I even asked. Lyra had that kind of creativity, twisted, personal, effective. I found her in the school parking lot. "Why?" I asked. She tilted her head, smiling. "Maybe you should ask yourself why people believe it's you." I showed Delora the account. Her response? A shrug. "It's just teenage drama. Everyone goes through this. Grow up." "Someone is impersonating me." "Oh, please, you're acting like it's identity theft." "Because it is." She rolled her eyes. "If you spent half as much time fixing your attitude as you do blaming your sister, maybe things would be different." That's when I stopped trying to explain. My voice didn't carry weight in that house, or anywhere else they touched. At night, I wrote more. I filled pages, not just letters to Dad anymore, but journal entries, rage laid out in neat cursive. "I didn't deserve this," I wrote, "but I'll let it mold me." Fire doesn't just destroy, it forges. I no longer expected fairness. I didn't crave approval. I started letting go of the idea that anything I did would change them. So I stopped defending myself, and I started planning a life where I wouldn't need to. It arrived in a thin white envelope, the kind most people wouldn't even glance at twice, but I knew what it was the moment I saw the university logo in the top corner. My hands trembled as I peeled it open, heart thudding like it hadn't dared to in years. Dear Kala Morgan, we are pleased to offer you a full academic scholarship. I had to read it twice just to believe it. I sat down on my bed, letter in hand, eyes wide, jaw slack. For the first time in what felt like forever, something was mine, earned, not given. A door cracked open, leading somewhere that didn't have their voices in the next room. I didn't tell anyone that night. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in a book on my shelf, and waited for the right moment. I knew they wouldn't be happy for me, but I hoped some small, stubborn part of me still hoped they might at least pretend. A few nights later, during dinner, I brought it up. Everyone was in their usual places, chewing, scrolling, ignoring. I got into West Virginia University, I said, voice steady, with a full ride. Delora didn't even blink. For what? Business management. Silence. Who's paying for your dorm? She said finally, wiping her mouth. Because we're already budgeting for Lyra's design program. I told you it's a full scholarship. Housing, tuition, books. She laughed. Those scholarships always come with strings. And you're not ready for that kind of pressure. It's not your decision. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Before I could answer, she reached across the table, snatched the letter from my hand. She didn't even read it. She tore it down the center, slow and deliberate, like she was slicing me out of her future. I'm doing you a favor, she said, tossing the halves onto my plate. Dreams are dangerous when they don't fit your reality. Bran gave a quiet chuckle. Lyra barely looked up. I stared at the pieces of my future, now limp under a smear of mashed potatoes, and something inside me snapped. But it didn't shatter, it crystallized. I stood up. I won't forget this. Dolores smiled, smug. Good. Then maybe you'll stop wasting everyone's time. That weekend, I packed a bag and took the bus to Ruth's cottage. She opened the door before I even knocked. I was wondering when you'd come. We didn't speak much at first. She poured tea. I sat at the kitchen table, trying to hold it all together. I told her what happened, how Delora tore the letter like it meant nothing. Ruth didn't gasp or rage. She nodded, got up and disappeared into the back room. She returned with an old manila envelope, yellowed at the corners, thick with something heavy inside. Your father gave me this 3 weeks before he passed, she said, placing it in front of me. He told me to keep it safe, just in case. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a bank statement and a letter in my dad's handwriting. The account had my name on it. The savings were more than enough. He worried about Delora, Ruth said quietly. Said she'd been acting different, cold, secretive. He didn't want your future tied to anyone but yourself. Tears filled my eyes, but they didn't fall. I held the letter like it was life itself. They tried to chain me to that house, I whispered, but my father built a key and left it with someone who actually loved me. That night, I stayed in the guest room. The next day, I used Ruth's address to start applying again, this time in secret. It wasn't just about leaving anymore, it was about finally living. They waited until I was barely a month from graduation, as if they needed to remind me one more time that this was their house, their rules, and I had only ever been passing through. Gideon called it a family meeting, but I knew better the moment I stepped into the living room. He was standing beside the coffee table with a folder in his hand. Dolores sat stiffly on the love seat, arms crossed. Lyra was scrolling through her phone, but smirking like she already knew the punchline. Sit, Gideon said, voice clipped. I didn't move. He opened the folder. This is a basic asset reassignment form. Legal, straightforward, just a formality. I looked at the header, my name, printed in bold letters, and then the phrase, relinquishment of inheritance claims. What is this? I asked. Dolores kept her eyes fixed on the wall. Gideon answered without pause. We're just protecting the house. There's been some legal restructuring. You're 18 now. This is about being responsible. I'm not signing that. His tone sharpened. This isn't optional. You're either with this family or you're out.
Lyra chuckled under her breath. She's just mad she won't get a piece. I stared at Delora. She said nothing, not a word. I should have walked away. I should have called Ruth or a lawyer or screamed, but I didn't. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. It wasn't consent, it was exhaustion. I signed. The next week, Delora mailed out the family Christmas cards. She didn't show me the final design. I saw it when one of my teachers brought it to school. "Look who's all grown up," she'd said cheerfully, handing me the glossy postcard. It read, "Happy Holidays from the Vance family. Gideon, Delora, Lyra, and Bran." No mention of me, not even in the fine print. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled politely and slid it into my bag. At home, I found a whole stack of them in the trash. The extras. They'd ordered 100. When I asked Delora about it, she didn't flinch. "You've made it pretty clear you're not really part of this family anymore." One of my aunts left a voicemail. "Sweetheart, did you move? We got the card, but your name's not on it." Dolores' response, "Kala's doing her own thing. She's barely here." She said it like I was a guest who overstayed their welcome. That night, I stood in my room staring at the walls that used to have photos, the drawers that no longer had meaning. I pulled out the old suitcase from under my bed and began packing in silence. One sweatshirt, a few books, the planner I never let anyone see, a folder of scholarship applications sent from Ruth's address. They thought they could push me out. I was just making it official, I whispered aloud. They erased me from their pictures, but I'll frame my own life. No one heard me, but that didn't matter. The last thing I packed wasn't for school. It was a bracelet I wore as a kid, silver, worn down, with my initials barely legible on the clasp. I placed it in the top drawer of Dad's old desk, not as a gift, not as a goodbye, but as a mark that I had existed there. I closed the drawer slowly. "I'm not the one who left," I said quietly. "You pushed me out." The lawyer slid the folder across the table, his expression unreadable but respectful. "All right, Miss Morgan, everything's in order. Once he signs here, the property is officially transferred." I didn't hesitate. With one stroke of a pen, I gave Aunt Ruth the apartment in Cherry Creek. 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, granite countertops, and more peace than I'd ever known under Delora's roof. "She stood by me when no one else did," I said softly. "She deserves a home." He nodded, gathering the documents. "You understand this is permanent?" "Yes," I replied. "That's the point." When I stepped outside, the Denver air was crisp and dry, the kind of cold that woke you up without biting too deep. I took a breath so full it felt like my lungs were claiming space for the first time in years. Back at Ruth's, she was already pouring tea. Chamomile, her version of a toast. "You sure about this?" she asked, though her eyes already knew the answer. "She's going to come knocking," she added, setting my cup down. "She always does when she starts slipping." I wrapped my hands around the mug. Let her. And like clockwork, she came. 2 days later, a loud, frantic pounding shook the front door. Not a knock, a demand. Ruth glanced out the window, then at me. "It's her." I didn't move. Ruth walked to the door, opened it halfway. Delora was already mid-sentence. "I need to speak to my daughter. This has gone too far." Ruth kept her tone even. "Kala is an adult. You don't just get to appear now and expect access." Delora didn't even blink. "I want the account, the money from Franklin. It belongs to this family." "No," Ruth said. "It belongs to Kala. Your husband left it for her, and you knew that." "She wouldn't even have a future without me," Dolores snapped. "I carried her for 9 months. I fed her. I gave her a roof." Ruth's voice didn't rise, but her words cut clean. "And then you used her pain as leverage. That's not parenting. That's possession." Delora pushed past her, stepping into the living room like she still had a right to claim the air. I stood up. "If you cared even a fraction as much about me as you do that money," I said, "maybe we wouldn't be standing here." Dolores's face twisted. "You owe me everything." "I owe you nothing," I said. "You gave me life, and then tried to erase it." She scoffed, turning to Ruth. "You turned her against me." "I didn't have to," Ruth said. "You did that all on your own." Dolora's voice cracked, but the anger held steady. "You're throwing away your family." I met her eyes. "You made sure I never had one." A long silence followed, just the sound of the clock ticking above the mantel. Ruth took out her phone. "If you don't leave now, I'll be calling the police." Dolora's jaw clenched.
She looked at me one last time as if expecting me to cave, but I didn't flinch. She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Ruth locked it, then looked at me with something that felt like warmth and sorrow all at once. "You're safe here," she said quietly. "You always were, always will be." I nodded, still frozen in place, but I knew she wasn't done and that the final mask would break soon. The clinking of forks and the hum of fake laughter still rang in my ears as I replayed the moment at La Mirabelle, not with regret but with clarity. Delora had reached for the box like it was something to toss in her purse and forget. The wrapping was neat, elegant. I'd spent time choosing the ribbon, tying it like I cared. I didn't, not for her, but for the version of me that used to try so hard to matter. When she opened it and saw only a folded piece of paper, her smirk cracked. "What is this? A gift card? Did you seriously bring something this cheap to my anniversary?" I looked straight at her. "It's the deed to a luxury apartment downtown. You were right. It is too much. You don't deserve it." The silence fell fast and heavy. Lyra's jaw tensed. Bran's smirk dropped. Gideon didn't even flinch, just kept cutting his steak like the room hadn't chilled over. Peter raised his glass slightly, like maybe he thought it was a joke. Dolores stared at me, eyes wide with a fury she couldn't make pretty. "You think money makes you better than this family?" I smiled. "No, but it proved I never needed yours." And then I stood up. I thanked the waitress, left the box in the center of the table, and walked out. No one followed me. No one said a word. Outside, the air was sharp, a bite of cold across my skin, but it felt good, clean. I expected to feel grief or guilt or some pit in my stomach that reminded me I was walking away from blood. But I didn't. I felt weightless, like I'd finally returned everything they'd ever handed me. Blame, silence, erasure, all wrapped in a bow and placed right back in their laps. That night, the messages started first. "Delora, I may have overreacted. You always were dramatic, but we should talk." Then, Lyra, "Hey, about that internship thing. You mentioned it at some point, right? I'm thinking it could look good on my resume." Bran followed. "Look, we've had our issues, but family's family. I need a reference. Just write something basic." I read them all while sipping coffee in Ruth's kitchen. She was humming some old tune, watering her succulents like it was just another Tuesday, and it was, for me anyway. I didn't reply. The next day, the messages came again. "Lyra, you're being petty." Delora, "You wouldn't even have that apartment if not for me." Bran, "You're not better than us, Kala." And finally, Delora, "You owe us, after everything we did for you." I blocked every number. Then I posted one photo to my private Instagram, just a shot of the sky from my apartment balcony, the sun melting into pink and orange against the skyline. Caption, "Peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes it roars." That photo said everything I didn't need to explain. That evening, I told Ruth everything, the dinner, the messages, the silence that came after. She didn't interrupt, just poured tea into our matching mugs and waited until I exhaled. "You didn't just survive them," she said, eyes soft. "You outgrew them." I nodded. "I'm not angry anymore." "Good," she said, lifting her cup. "Because this toast isn't to revenge, it's to release." We clinked mugs gently, and as we sipped, I realized I wasn't aching anymore. I wasn't hiding or hoping or trying to fix what was broken before I was even born. I had finally stopped asking to be loved by people who never knew how. And still, part of me wondered, could I ever truly heal from what they didn't give? My mornings are quiet now. I wake to sunlight filtering through soft curtains, water the basil on my kitchen windowsill, and light a candle Ruth gave me from her favorite boutique, the one that smells like rain and honey. No noise, no tension, just the sound of my own breath and the ticking clock I picked out at a flea market last fall. It's a little crooked, a little chipped, but it works.
I updated my resume last week and booked a solo weekend trip up to Boulder. A cabin, a trail, no Wi-Fi. I didn't post about it, didn't announce it. It wasn't for anyone else. These days, I keep things close, not hidden, just sacred. I don't feel the need to prove anything anymore. My life isn't a performance. It's a place I live in fully. Occasionally, emails still come from Delora. Subject lines like, "Let's talk," or "We're still family," or the last one, "Don't do this to me." They always start the same way, an apology so polished it squeaks. Then come the reminders, the guilt-laced questions. You can't just pretend we don't exist. After all I did, I still deserve to be part of your life. But I don't open them anymore. I don't need to. There's nothing in them I haven't already read between the lines for years. And not reading them, that's my choice now. On Saturday, I drove to Ruth's. Her garden looked like something out of a painting, all soft purples and deep greens and bursts of marigold. She was already pulling weeds when I arrived, sun hat on a little dirt under her nails. "I brought the lemon bars," I called out. "You know the rules," she said. "No showing up empty-handed or with store-bought cookies." We laughed, the way we always do. We planted mint together, dug our fingers into the soil, and talked about everything and nothing. At one point, Ruth looked up at me, her face calm and kind. "You changed the story," she said. "You didn't just survive them, you rewrote the ending." I didn't expect the tears. They weren't sad, they just came because she was right, and hearing it from her made it real. Later that night, back at my apartment, I sat down at my desk and opened a fresh notebook. I wrote a letter to Delora, not out of anger, not for revenge, just words that needed out. "I forgive you," I wrote, "but I no longer need you, and that is my freedom." I folded it and placed it in the bottom drawer. I won't send it. It's not for her. It's for me. Mira came by the next morning. She brought iced coffee and a travel guide. We curled up on my balcony, flipping through pages and circling destinations we might visit one day. Italy, Oregon, maybe even Japan. At one point, she asked if I missed them. I didn't lie. "Sometimes," I said, "but not in the way they think." She nodded, like she understood. I looked out at the skyline, soft clouds drifting over the city I'd rebuilt myself in. "Family isn't always who raised you," I said. "Sometimes it's who helped you rise." Mira reached over and squeezed my hand. There's peace in the silence, not because I've forgotten the past, but because it no longer gets to win. Sometimes the hardest part isn't walking away, it's believing you're allowed to. I spent years thinking love had to hurt, that loyalty meant silence, and that being family meant enduring anything. But that's not true. What I've learned is this: you don't owe anyone a lifetime of pain just because they gave you your name. Healing doesn't always come with loud victories or grand gestures. Sometimes it's found in small things: a quiet apartment, a friend who stays, a garden full of second chances. It's in choosing peace over permission, and most of all, in choosing yourself without apology. If you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or unloved by the very people who were supposed to protect you, let me say this clearly. You are not broken, you are becoming, and you get to define what family means to you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who kept taking more than they gave? Or maybe you found your Ruth, someone who showed up when no one else did. Tell me your story. Drop a 1 in the comments if this video touched your heart, or let me know where you're watching from. I read every message. And hey, if this video wasn't for you, that's okay too. Let me know why. I'm here to listen. This space is for you, and for all of us learning how to heal together. And if you'd like more stories like this, ones that dive deep, hit home, and maybe even help you breathe a little easier, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Your next story might be the one you didn't know you needed. Until next time, keep choosing peace.